9:07, 7:09.
John Cass and Jake Hartford in for Bruce and Dan on 890 WLS, taking your calls, 591-8900. Bring them in.
Good morning, John.
Good morning, my friend.
How's your thumb?
My thumb is rather, had been turgid with blood, but now it's been fixed.
John is playing hurt today.
I'm really hurt. I had a bad thumb. It's really stupid. I had to go get it lanced the other day.
It's like having turf toe.
Except on your hand.
Yeah.
You know, it's really ridiculous.
We, speaking of turf toe, we will get the final sentence on Jerry Sandusky from Pennsylvania. During the show, we're going to talk to one of the legal analysts about what he faces, also what he faces once he goes to prison. We'll have somebody talking about that.
Like what kind of crafts he'll be able to work on.
And yesterday he did an interview or a statement for Penn State Radio where he just denies everything.
Not only that, it's all the kids' fault.
Yeah, he didn't do it.
They did it.
Anyway, we're going to get into that a little bit later on. Also, how the dead, our military heroes in Afghanistan, are being treated. You're not going to believe. You're not going to believe.
You will not.
Yeah.
You will not believe it. What Obama's doing to them.
But it's true. But first, the big local story has to do with the governor and the mayor not seeing eye to eye. Do they see eye to eye on anything, John?
Well, Rahm is like the Rahmfather is about 5'6", and Pat Quinn is about what? Give or take a couple yards of Jell-O, about a foot taller, I'd say, right? So they can't see eye to eye. And that now they're leaking on each other. Rahm leaks that the sports facility, maybe he didn't. Maybe it just happened by magic. I'm assuming that he leaked. Maybe he didn't. Sorry, Rahmfather. Leaks that the Quinn's Choice for Sports Facilities Authority had, a checkered financial past?
Let me just say this. Mark Brown of the Sun-Times has a very good column on it this morning.
Yes, he's a good column.
Which really kind of explains everything behind the scenes. Do you
want him to sit in here?
No.
He could come and
no,
explain
I'm just saying.
All right, no. Me too. It's good.
I would have read your version of it this morning, but you're not in the paper on Tuesday.
No, Wednesday.
But you'll be there tomorrow. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday.
The cast plan.
So anyway, basically, the Illinois Sports Facility Authority is a state agency with board members, 4 of which are appointed by the governor, 3 of which are appointed by the mayor. There is a small staff. The executive director is usually appointed by the governor. At least it has been. And the person that the governor is appointing worked for him in the state. But before that, she was doing budget stuff, though, according to the stories. Yeah. But before that, she was a reporter for Fox TV here in Chicago.
Kelly Craft.
And I don't know her. And in 2009, she filed for personal bankruptcy because she had amassed some debts. Which, in this economic time, it's not surprising.
That people have debts? Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's what Quinn says in this paper. Let's see. I've said over and over again, I don't think public money should be abused with respect to private stadiums. Kelly Craft is a strong woman who knows how to say no to proposals that are not in the public interest. What he doesn't want is a backroom deal involving private sports stadiums.
But the reality is, over there, the executive director just kind of runs the day-to-day operation. Any kind of deals that are done for anything come through the board, and she would be below the board.
And you know what the deals are? Basically, they take tax money from the hotel tax, okay? And they spend it the way the bosses of like how Jerry Reinsdorf wants it spent, and how all the other people. It's a fiction that they really care about the taxpayer. Well, it's about dealing with what does the owner want. Well, does the owner want Stevie Lombardo from Gibson's to have a restaurant at Sox Park? I guess they did. They did.
I can't speak to that. I can't speak to when the Bears wanted to rehab Soldier Field, the Sports Facility Authority was brought in to underwrite the bonds to do that. And now I think what they're looking at Wrigley, remember Blago's original plan was he instructed Jim Thompson, who was the chairman of the board at the time, to negotiate a deal where they bought Wrigley and the facilities people would pay for the upkeep, which I think was a dumb plan.
Still a dumb plan.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is the same plan. I don't know what they're going to do.
Well, going back to your Bear thing,
and it has to do with taxes.
Remember the Bear state? It costs $1 billion. That toilet bowl on the lake, it looks like a tidy bowl. It's an ugly thing from the outside. Okay, it looks ridiculous, and it cost $1 billion when you deal in the debt service and everything. $1 billion. It could have been done for a lot less. Okay, so they spend money. You know, they love spending money. And guess what? Why aren't we taking that hotel money, instead of using it to buy stadiums, use it to hire some cops? Use it to keep some libraries open. Give it to Jake and John. I don't know. Anything but that.
The argument with Wrigley is that Wrigley generates a lot of money. Now, I think the last plan the Ricketts had was to get an advance on the admission taxes and use that money for the rehab, and that didn't seem to fly.
They lost over 100 games this year. They fill out the stadium every day. Are you kidding me?
27,606. You know what that number is, John?
What is that number?
That was the paid attendance for the last game of the season. 100-plus loss, Houston playing 100-plus loss Cubs, and the paid attendance was 27,606. You got to love that.
So if they're going to spend that, why does the tax money have to go there? It's ridiculous. On that, on stadiums, on this ridiculous Riverwalk thing where they're going to get a lot of...
Oh, I'm for that.
How dare you? What did you just say?
Yes. They're going to have restaurants down by the river.
Doctor, what?
They're going to have restaurants down by the river.
You know what should be by the river? Fishermen and bums, okay? What do you mean restaurants?
We can have that, too.
Fishermen and bums.
You can have a little fisherman area and a little bum area.
Plus, it needs a place.
Plus, it's going to cost $100 million, but the good news, it's federal money. It's not Chicago money, it's federal money.
That's Obama money.
Yeah.
That doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, see? So you don't,
it's free. Obama money.
See, I go for that.
Like my Obama phone.
591-8900 is the phone number. Your thoughts on Wrigley and the state becoming a landlord of Wrigley. That needs a lot of fixing up. I'd move on to a different type of property.
Yeah, 0.
We'll get your reaction. 9:15, time for traffic right here on 89 WLS. 9:16, John Cass, Jake Hartford, in for Bruce and Dan, talking about the state and Wrigley. And one of the advantages, right before we get to the calls, John, is the argument they make is that the state has a bonding power which gets a lower rate than if a regular private citizen tried to bond, or in this case, the Ricketts.
Well, basically, yeah, and you know what it tells me? There's always been a deal. It's a deal and an inside deal, and some guy like Jim Thompson, who, you know, that's Mr. Fiduciary Responsibility, right? Just ask Lord Black. Listen, I'll read you something. Not Vice President Emanuel, that's a few years from now. Mayor Emanuel is saying the board, meaning the board of the Sports Facilities Planning Authority, and the staff are literally the thin blue line protecting taxpayers, and I want the best there. So, can I ask you something, Mr. Mayor? Those are the thin blue line means cops. Why don't you start paying the coppers and hiring more police and not worrying about sports?
Ken in Chicago. Good morning, Ken. Welcome to 89 WLS.
Hey, good morning. Thank you. Hey, I think it's very interesting the fact that the state says, and the city also says that their budget, they don't have any money, but for some reason they want to find some money to purchase Wrigley Field. And I always find it very interesting that whenever the country or the economy goes through recession, states, local governments say that they don't have any money. It's not like people stop paying taxes. So it makes me wonder if politicians are really, for the most part, con artists themselves. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks, Ken.
Do you ever wonder, Jake, if it's politicians who run our state or the guys who pour asphalt and concrete that run our state? I wonder. How you doing?
Jim and Gary. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. Yeah, I was going to say this money that comes from the federal is not exactly free. It comes out of the transportation department. Like, I live in Michigan, and they were doing a linear park project, which paved blacktop pavement all the way from one side of Battle Creek over to Lake Michigan. It was like a couple $1 million. And that just came out of transportation. And they built bridges and footbridges that nobody even uses. a couple $1 million a piece, right next to a bridge that's actually got a sidewalk on it. So when your roads and your bridges ain't getting built, this is the reason why it's bad enough to use it half of the federal road tax to subsidize the railroads.
Jim, I think I love your call, and thanks for calling from Michigan, but I think you're wrong. Federal money comes from a tree. It's a little tree. And the president shakes it. It's got his name on it. It's called Obama money, and he shakes it, and the Obama money comes down.
Well, you do me a favor. Find out where he bought it from so I can go get one and plant it in my yard.
The roots are all the way in China, Jim. The roots are in China. It costs 40 cents for every leaf.
Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Mike in North Indiana. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine.
I think it's real interesting how Rahm Emanuel can get all upset that this Christina Kraft, or whatever her name is, that Quinn appointed to the Sports Authority. He can get all upset about her filing personal bankruptcy, but yet he supported a Secretary of the Treasury while he was in the Obama administration that can't even pay his own taxes.
Well, now if you're going to start getting picky, Mike.
I'm not getting picky. I mean, it's...
Well, that's old. Mike, that's old news.
It's old news, huh?
Yes, that's yesterday's news.
Stand up for yourself, Mike. You're from Northwest Indiana, man. Don't let him bully you. You're right. Leave him alone, Jake. Thanks, Mike. Dude.
You're welcome. You have a good day.
Listen. It's funny how one man's bankruptcy is another man's...
But that's old news. That was old news. That was yesterday's news.
Yeah, let's forget about it.
And actually,
let's forget about it.
Actually, when you think about it, those taxes were owed under Bush's administration.
Right.
Yeah,
Geithner, and they didn't even know.
Yeah, Geithner owed that money from Bush's administration. So it's actually Bush's fault.
And don't even forget. And it's all. Wait, isn't this everything Bush's fault? The gas, everything.
Yeah.
Wrigley,
everything.
Bush's fault.
Yep. What did Bush do for Wrigley? Nothing.
Nothing.
There you go. 9:21. Back after this on 89 WLS.
89 WLS.
Campaign promises, empty rhetoric. Who will hold them accountable? You will, right here. This is your Common Sense Election Headquarters, 89 WLS.
9:27.
John Cass, Jake Hartford, in for Bruce and Dan.
We will have a expert from the scene in Pennsylvania to give us the latest. As you just heard Dave break in, Sandusky's getting minimum 30 years in prison. Actually, 30 to 60 years is the number. He's 68 years old.
I'm sure he's hope springs eternal, but not for him.
Not for him. And we'll have that coming up at 9:37. Don in Evanston. Good morning, Don.
Hey, guys. John, I wanted to thank you for the intellectual property. I'm going to borrow it for my new restaurant. It's going to be called, down on the Riverwalk, it's going to be called Fisherman Bums, but I'm looking for partnership if you're willing.
I know Jake and I will be glad to give you all our money, and you can invest it as long as we bring it in $20 bills, correct?
In paper bags, please.
Let me tell you something about that river, all right? It's kind of a dangerous place you guys don't understand. I remember a guy named Schimmel, and he had a river taxi service. He was breaking in the river taxi business a few years ago, and he kept getting tickets from the city about his river taxis. And then...
Speeding?
Not speeding, parking tickets with river taxis. How do you get it? And also other announcements and fines and fees, and he didn't get the message. And finally, he was driving on Lumber Street at 19th and Lumber. You know where that is? That's kind of a vacant spot on the edge of Chinatown.
Yeah.
And on Lumber, 19th and Lumber, he stopped for a train tracks. A train was going by, and when the train stopped going by, Mr. Schimmel was dead with 2 in the back of the head. And I went out there the next day, and I said to a woman who had a coffee truck, and I gave her a 20. And I said, were you here yesterday? And she said, Mr. Cass, keep your 20. Have a nice cup of coffee. So
thank you, Don.
Beware, Don.
Maybe I won't be investing with Don.
No, we will be, because Don is going to protect us.
It just shows you trains are very unsafe.
Water can be dangerous to people's health. They never solved that case. Interesting story. Chicago.
Who wrote the parking tickets for the boat?
It was the Department of Revenue, I think, or the Department of Boats. Department of Get Out of Here. Department of We Don't Want Yous.
Do they have like a booting boat that goes down the river that if you don't pay your tickets, they put a boot on your boat?
It's kind of like pulling the plug. They kind of like maybe want to pull the big rubber plug in the middle of the boat. But I guess when the guy was murdered, they didn't have to anymore. These things happen in Chicago. They're mysteries.
They never solved it.
Be careful on there. Yeah, they never solved it.
John Cass, Jake Hartford in for Bruce and Dan, who are in for Don and Roma. When we come back, we're going to have an expert talk about Sandusky and the hearing this morning. He's getting 30 to 60 years. Could be a life sentence. And most people would be happy with that. It's 9:30, time for Dave Stewart with news, weather, and traffic right here in 89 WLS.
Bruce Wolf and Dan Proft, Chicago's talk leader, 89 WLS.